I wanted to talk about Clayton Beeter today. You've had six turns now to watch him. He was obviously crushing it with Somerset this year. Beater's gone on to be called up and has pitched in the Futures game. So what have you seen out of him? I know he had a killer outing this week against Rochester.
Yeah, so you mentioned all the times that he's pitched, but it's kind of been a weird situation because he came up around the Futures game, and where his spot in the rotation hit around the Futures game forced him to miss a week leading up to it, which in the Yankees organization means the time you miss, you don't just go back out there with your full pitch count. So he went to the Futures game, only threw an inning, so his pitch count goes way down. So then he's got to build it back up again. And so I feel like we're just kind of getting back to where Beeter can just go out and be a normal dude. And this most recent time was going to be pretty interesting to me because he and the rest of the pitching staff pretty much had a really bad series in Buffalo the week before. The Rail Riders lost 5 of 6. They were outscored by 30 runs. None of the games were really close. And Beeter gave up 11 runs in, I think it was 3 innings. It was not a good start for him. But so this last time he came out was much better. Probably still not where he wants to be in terms of he's given up 9 home runs at AAA. I believe it's 9 home runs, whereas at AA he allowed 3 the whole season. So he's kind of adjusting to that, and I'll be interested to see if those are early AAA jitters, things he's figuring out, or whether that's going to be some sort of problem that kind of sustains for the rest of the season.
Beeter and I want to talk about Will Warren today too, but Beeter is a guy that like Warren didn't have much left to prove at AA, so their call-ups felt at least fairly warranted in that regard. When given the context of the Yankees situation now, when you're talking about the struggles of Luis Severino and you're kind of still wondering what you're going to get out of Nestor Cortez at this point, and is it worth, I mean, obviously they didn't invest a lot at the deadline this year, but still saying they're all in. So there's some mixed signals coming from the big league side. And Stacey and I last week were talking about how we've seen teams in recent years be a lot more aggressive with their prospects, especially when maybe it's a lost season. And you're going, let's see what we have for 2024 potentially. Do you see, I don't want to get to Warren just yet, but do you see Clayton Beeter as potentially a guy if the Yankees in theory wave the white flag going, let's see what Beeter's got in the show?
I mean, it's probably not out of the question at this point just because he's a starter at AAA. And so that's a pretty good place to start in terms of who are you going to call up to be in the majors. I would say, though, that I think he's probably not first on the depth chart. They sent down Jhony Brito today. I don't know that he would be the guy either. In terms of what he just did in his last start, Randy Vasquez looks like he might be the dude that steps into the rotation whenever they decide to move on to Luis Severino. And if you kind of read the rhetoric, it feels like that is coming close. Randy had the best start I've seen him throw on. It was on Wednesday against Rochester. He was dominant. Rochester had no chance. I think they had a couple hits in the first inning. If they didn't have that, I thought he was going to throw a no-hitter because his stuff was just that good. And he's kind of been a guy who what people have seen at the majors has been much better than what we've seen at AAA. I think his ERA is still above 5, but then again, in AAA this year, everybody's ERA is around 5. It's kind of hard to pitch. But the Randy that we saw last time out, which happened to coincide with the day that Domingo Germán went to be in rehab for his alcohol issues. It happened to line up with that. Randy said that he didn't know about that before he took the mound, but it kind of felt like he knew that he was pitching for something more kind of starting that day. I think he probably followed a rough Severino start too, maybe in that sort of time frame. So I think he could sense that there's an opening up there. And I think he might have a little bit of like a big game kind of factor in him where he does well. Beeter, I think he's still adjusting to AAA for him to go up right now. Like maybe in September, maybe once we get to September, maybe once he gets a couple more starts under his belt, he initially talked about how he's adjusting to the different balls at AAA, which they use the major league balls, which is crazy that they're not just using the major league balls all throughout the minors. That guys have to totally change the way they throw pitches when they get from AA to AAA is like wild to me. But I think it was affecting his breaking ball a little bit. And so he's still kind of adjusting to that. And I think this last start was good. I feel like he can build off of it in the next start. And that might be like his best start that we've seen at AAA this year.
Of course, they'll also be at home, so no travel this week. Get back-to-back homestand here for the 2 weeks, so that always makes things a little easier, especially at this point in the season. We briefly touched on Will Warren, and I want to talk about him here. He kind of has the same trajectory as Beeter. I mean, he was destroying AA hitting. Just there was. I mentioned nothing left to prove. Will Warren, he had nothing to prove at AA anymore. Kind of had a similar line against Rochester, gave up a pair of solo shots, 6 innings, 5 hits, a walk, and 6 Ks. Like Beeter before him, got lit up against Buffalo, like you mentioned. So when comparing the two, like where do you see Warren in comparison to Beeter at the AAA level? He's obviously had a little more time too.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Will Warren's been here a little bit longer, so I feel like he's experienced what it's like to face the AAA hitters a little bit more than Beeter has. It's kind of interesting with Will. You know, last year at AA, I think he wrapped up the season striking out like fewer than 9 guys per 9 innings, which for like a top prospect isn't great, I wouldn't say. Even if you're like a ground ball guy and your top prospect, you should still kind of be able to get that strikeout numbers up a bit. So then Will comes to AA this year, and the strikeout numbers go crazy. I think he was north of 12 at one point. So he's back down now. He's not striking out as many. And I'm kind of wondering if, you know, he's a guy who just takes a little bit to adjust to the new level. Like maybe we're going to start to see the strikeouts climb as soon as he gets more, you know, starts at AAA and stuff like that. I'm still kind of trying to figure out, is Will going to be a soft contact kind of guy, or is he going to be a guy who strikes people out considering how much his pitches move? It feels like he should probably be able to strike out a few more people. But again, he might be adjusting to like the new ball too. I don't know. He's still kind of a guy who I'm trying to figure out exactly what kind of pitcher we're going to have from him.
Well, I'm sure he's also figuring that out as he goes along. I know Sam Breen had mentioned when he did get the call up AAA, a lot of it had to do, or a good chunk of it had to do, like with putting away hitters with 2 strikes, like having 2 strikes and finishing, as opposed to, you know, throwing 2 extra pitches at that point to try and get that out. So we'll see if that, you know, you keep adjusting. And like you said, it's an adjustment once you jump from double to AAA, and it's an adjustment when we go from triple to the majors. So like there's these steps in place. I'm curious to see how the Yankees, because they haven't been very aggressive with their prospects, as we know. I mean, you're watching Oswald on a daily basis every night, so that tells you a lot. Hey, thanks so much for checking out Minors Monday. Here on Locked On Yankees, we do this every single Monday where we check out the top performers in the Yankees system throughout this entire season. Of course, if you're new here, we also do regular Yankees coverage Monday through Friday. Every single day, we have Yankees coverage here on Locked On Yankees. So hit subscribe if you like content like this, and you'll always be able to hang out with Stacy and myself.